My uncle has a hunting cabin in the northern part of the state. He's had it 30 years, goes up every fall, knows the land around it like a second home. When he offered it to me for a week in August, said I looked like I needed the quiet. I drove up alone, no specific plan, just the idea of a week with no phone signal and no obligations. I'd been there once as a kid. I remembered it as small and sturdy and smelling of wood smoke. That's what it still was. I unloaded my car and did a walkthrough. 2 rooms, a covered porch, a hand pump for water, a generator I'd been told to use sparingly. My uncle had stocked it with basics: tinned food, coffee, a box of paperbacks. I found the spare lamp he'd mentioned, the emergency radio, the first aid kit under the sink. Everything in order, clean and quiet and mine for a week. I made dinner and sat on the porch and watched the tree line go dark. No sounds except insects and the distant movement of something in the underbrush. Normal, my uncle had said. Deer mostly, occasionally a bear, but they don't come close. I went to bed early and slept well. The second morning I found the cup, a tin camp cup, on the small table beside the wood stove. I hadn't put it there. I'd used my own mug the first morning, a travel mug I'd brought from home. This cup was my uncle's. I recognized it, the dent on one side, the handle worn pale at the grip. He kept it on the shelf above the stove. I put it back on the shelf. I told myself I'd moved it without thinking and forgotten. That afternoon I walked the perimeter of the property. My uncle had described the boundary clearly: a creek to the north, a fire road to the east, a ridgeline to the west, open farmland to the south, about 40 acres, mostly wooded. I walked the full circuit, 2 hours, familiarizing myself. At the northwest corner, near where the creek bent, I found a fire ring. Not my uncle's. His fire ring was behind the cabin, a permanent stone circle he'd built himself. This was different, a rough ring of field stones, moved from the creek bed by the look of them, ash in the center. The ash was gray and dry, a week old, maybe 2. I stood and looked at it for a while. Hunters, maybe. Trespassing wasn't uncommon in rural land, my uncle had mentioned it. Someone had camped on the far corner of his property and moved on, but the stone ring was positioned facing the cabin. From where you'd sit at the fire, across the 40 yards of open ground between the trees and the porch, you'd have a clear sight line to the cabin's front window. I went back to the cabin. I checked the door. My uncle's lock, a heavy padlock, intact. All the windows latched. Nothing disturbed. I called my uncle on the emergency radio that evening. The signal was poor but passable, and mentioned the fire ring. He went quiet for a moment. Then he said, "How old?" I said maybe a week or 2. He said, "I haven't had anyone up there since October." October was 10 months ago. He told me to keep the door locked and not to worry. He said people drifted through the woods up there sometimes, and it was usually nothing. His tone was the tone of someone trying to be reassuring, which is a different tone from someone who is actually reassured. The third night I woke up at 3 a.m. to a sound on the porch. I lay still and listened. Footsteps, slow, deliberate, crossing from one side to the other, pausing. Then the sound of the door handle being tried. My uncle's lock held. The handle was tried twice, then stopped. Footsteps back across the porch. Then nothing. I didn't sleep again. In the morning I went out at first light and checked the porch. Boot prints in the soft wood and the peat that had blown up against the boards. Large, deep, recent. 2 sets, one going to the door. One, slightly different tread, standing near the porch rail, facing the window. I hadn't heard the second one. I'd been listening, afraid, tracking the sounds of the first. And there had been a second person standing quietly at the window, watching in, while I lay in the dark, listening to the first one try the door. I left that morning, drove 4 hours straight, didn't stop. I told my uncle. He filed a report with the county sheriff. As far as I know, nothing came of it. He still goes up every fall. He says it's his land and he won't be run off it. I respect that. But he's started going with a friend now, never alone. He hasn't offered me the cabin again. I haven't asked.